During the earliest decades of the nation, virtually everybody heard, made, and moved to music. In an age before broadly accessible commercial entertainment, where one's routine labors begged for distracting relief, song and dance enlivened life's tedium. Music filled an important social niche in the publicly lived do-it-yourself world of early America. In this time before sound recordings, music was purely ephemeral and was only heard by those who could perform it, or those who might be near enough to listen to others performing. And hello, I'm Joe Hines, and this is American Song, a podcast that traces the roots of today's popular musical art forms. My aim is to uncover the history and development of the music we live by in this modern world. As we'll see together, the development of the many forms of music has had contributions of cultures from across the world. Here in America, people came from across the world to forge a new society that has its own unique culture. Music plays a very important role in the lives of millions of our citizens, and so I hope you'll enjoy the journey I've planned for us. I'll be sharing the history, as well as the actual sounds of different tangled roots of our musical heritage for you throughout this podcast. The first song, My Old Kentucky Home, is by Stephen Foster, who was a massively popular American songwriter who lived between 1826 and 1864. This is an actual gramophone recording made in 1897, just a little more than 30 years after Foster's death. It was produced in New York City by E. Berliner's Gramophone Company. So, music held the social order together in early America, but it might also be used to challenge the status quo. People sang privately to soothe their sorrows and publicly to celebrate their happier moments. Music was used in worship, as well as to add a little spice to more earthly desires. Bells pealed to mark the seasons and to call a community to arms. Some worked to music, while others played. Music might even provide one's livelihood. Musical skill and literacy gave the educated elite status, while common folk employed music to express equally as meaningful identities. In all these ways, music symbolized, expressed, and transcended the diversity within early America. Our nation was a melting pot from the very beginning, and each arriving culture brought their own music with them. The earliest people in North America were the Native Americans. The continent was home to a large number of culturally rich tribes, and each tribe had its own distinctive voice or approach to music. Generally speaking, Native American music was voice-based instead of instrument-based. Of course, drums and other percussion instruments like shakers played a role. Some tribes also had flutes and whistles. Native songs were nearly always connected to spirituality. For various rites and rituals to work, the proper songs and dances had to be performed. For Native Americans, songs were not just beautiful sounds. They were a functioning part of their authentic, natural world. They had purpose. They were love songs, dream songs, and pipe songs. Songs also mediated personal bonds, and functioned as part of ceremonial protocol. Music built and stabilized relationships within tribes, between tribes, and between tribal and non-tribal people. Native American music facilitated interactions, including those between the human and the spiritual worlds. Those last two examples were, in turn, the Sioux War Dance Song and the Buffalo Dance Song. Both of them were recorded by Indian children around the year 1901. The recordings are now kept in the Archive of Folk Songs within the Library of Congress. As the colonial experiments proved themselves out, and life improved beyond mere survival, the hymns of Congregationalist churches shifted from ritual to art with the full support system of church choirs, singing masters, public psalters, and singing schools. One such church composer was an African-born former slave named Newport Gardner from Rhode Island. He was born Okremer Mariku, they think perhaps in Ghana, in or around the year 1746. When he was 14, he was captured and taken as a slave to Newport, Rhode Island, where he was sold to Caleb Gardner. The Gardner family showed considerable charity and kindness towards the young man, making sure that he was educated at least as thoroughly as their own children were. Within 4 years of his arrival in Newport, he learned English, French, and the basics of music, and became a Christian. In the year 1791, when he was 45, it was a very special year. It's reported that in that year, he had the good fortune to be in a pool of friends who won the lottery. And this enabled him to buy freedom for himself and his family. In turn, he decided and set out to support his family by teaching music. His former master's wife reportedly was one of his students in music, dance, and composition. After his freedom, he opened a school on School Street, primarily to educate blacks. If you happen to be in Newport, Rhode Island, you can actually look for and find the building which currently still stands. Newport Gardner eventually moved to Liberia and Monrovia, Africa, in 1825. Monrovia was a new African nation established by President James Monroe as a solution to the problem of free blacks in the United States. Unfortunately, and like many African Americans who emigrated there, he lacked the natural immunity to local diseases, and he died a few months later. By 1810, over 5,000 musical compositions by American psalmodists had appeared in print, including Richard Allen's 1801 hymn collection for his Philadelphia African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first known compilation of sacred music for a black congregation. By the 1820s, singing societies influenced by German Romanticism, such as the Boston Handel and Haydn Society, attached moral uplift to certain song styles. Such institutionally supported sacred music competed with the music culture enlivened by the Second Great Awakening. These styles were infused with individual expressiveness as part of revivalist religion. Many of the songs used in these settings were based on traditional African call and response and singing, quote, marked by spontaneity, immediacy, emotionality, and the use of well-known tunes, end quote. Often, the act of vocalizing could inspire worshipers even more than a song's lyrics. The central message of this sacred religious musical style was that God's grace was available to all. Another important occasion for the use of music, inclusion of music in people's lives, were, of course, the holidays. The Christmas holidays were an especially active time for music making in early America. Early English colonists brought the wassailing tradition with them to the New World. The tradition included the entry of poorer carolers into the homes of wealthier colonists. They'd sing their demands for food and drink in exchange for goodwill, probably something like, if you give us enough of your fine mead and venison, we'll go away. Wassailing began disappearing in the 19th century as traditional social patterns gradually disappeared. However, rowdy, raucous, drunken singers continued to parade at night during the Christmas season and even in urban areas. Drinking and singing remained intertwined as significant holiday practices. This next song comes from 1913, recorded in New York. The song is called Christmas Joy, performed by Marshall Lufsky, who played flute, George Stell, who played violin, and it was composed by somebody named E.D. Wagner. Charles Schultz played harp. That last song was called Medley of Christmas Carols and included When Christ Was Born, Holy Night, Silent Night, and A Joyful Christmas Song. It was recorded by a mixed vocal quartet. Nevada Vanderveer was a contralto, Agnes Kimball was a soprano, Frank Croxton was the bass, and Reed Miller the tenor. Recorded in 1911 in New York. The Blacks had their own traditions during the holiday period that included public song and dance. In these, parading bands of musicians requested gifts of food, money, or alcohol, taking African-derived song and dance culture to the broader communities amongst whom they lived. Parades remained central to Black public musical activities that typically featured boisterous improvised music and back-and-forth interactions between male and female spectators and parade performers. In the old plantation South, and especially during corn-shucking events, remember that music was often a part of enduring repetitive hard work. Messages that could not be expressed in other circumstances could be sung. Under the guise of holiday celebration, Black celebrants could also openly ridicule the powerful whites. This was called singing the master, and it empowered slaves to openly express feelings that were otherwise forbidden. We owe an incredible debt to the Africans who brought their rhythms and music with them, even as they were enslaved. West and Central Africans made music as varied as the Europeans, amongst whom those enslaved would eventually live in America. They carried their local music expectations to their new homes across the Atlantic, where they accessed multi-continental repertoires. They and their descendants built upon musical heritages both deep and broad. New Orleans is going to play an incredibly important role later in our story and podcast, especially due to the way African music traditions were shared at a place called Congo Square. During the colonial period and into the 19th century, diverse African songs and dances, instruments, and rituals and festivals were all celebrated by both the enslaved and the free black populations. Congo Square was a site where slaves from the city could go to socialize on Sunday afternoons. And there they sang and danced in styles from distinct homeland traditions, providing not just entertainment, but also a very important connection to their own heritage. Some Catholic Congolese slaves performed sangamentos. They were highly choreographed mock war dances accompanied with drums and bells that were crucial to later Mardi Gras practices. These weekly gatherings helped the black community hang on to their heritage under the most oppressive conditions of slavery. And song also organized regimented tasks and eased the burden of endless, profitless work. The call and response style helped build and strengthen community. Particular songs might be appropriate for a certain labor activity, like rowing or hoeing or shucking corn. Work songs built community among the slaves, and often the lyrics challenged the status quo with satirical commentary.
Oh, baby, what you want me to do? But to give you my money and die for you. Well, I was waiting for my summer change. I was waiting on my summer change. Just as soon as the wind rises again, I'm gonna go away. I take my 3220 and lay you in your grave. And the day resurrection, you're gonna rise again. On these old days, I hope it don't be long. I'm gonna start to singing. Hey, woman, I'm gonna go my home. Everybody keep on hollering about old dangerous blues. I get my 3220, I'm gonna be dangerous too. Well, my 38, 40 do very well. But my folk catch a fire is a burning head. Now, baby, just too soon as the day rise again, I'm gonna make my living on some old other place. Hey, Lordy, on some old other place. I've been laying around, mama, all day long. Just sitting and thinking, must I blow my horn? I sitting here talking to this little old woman, begging for kitty tongue. Oh, Lordy, yeah, for kitty tongue. Well, I was wondering if I go down in Louisiana, oh, with my woman be there. Then you scare Mr. Charlie about Mr. Blair. Mr. Charlie, what you want? Mr. Blair, give a dress. Where about now, woman? What you want to be? I mean, working from Mr. Charlie, I go to Mr. Blair. Just as soon as I make $100, I give my woman $50. I throw the rest away. Oh, Lordy, you just keep on hollering about the times have been. Indeed, the blues I'm singing. Oh, I've been here and gone. I'm gonna change my home one of these days. And my woman, she told me to change my home. And my daddy, he told me, son, you're right. Now when I was a little kid at home with no baby, my father, he grabbed me, shook the bed away. I'm gonna tell my woman what the man told me. I'm gonna pay you your money when the man pay me. Well, all right.
Talented, enslaved musicians had to master multiple genres. They performed serious classical music for the master's cotillions. And at the same time, they played lively jigs and breakdowns and reels that were popular with lower-class white and black dancers alike. Black music and dance emphasized improvisation, complex rhythms, artist-audience dialogue, as well as personal stylistic competition and community-approved context.
You know the sun is going down. I I sit behind that old western hill. I sit behind that old western hill. You know I wouldn't do a thing, not against my baby's will. Man, you know that's bad. I declare that's too blackbird. I declare that's too blackbird. You know my woman done quit me. Ooh, man, look like the whole round world is great. You know she stopped writing. Wouldn't even send me no kind of word. I said she wouldn't send me no kind of word. She turned it all back on me about some old around thing she heard. But I'm going away, baby. I'm going to stay there a long time. Oh, I say I'm going to stay there a long time. You know I'm coming back now, honey. Ooh, baby, till you change your mind. I wake up every morning feeling sick and bad. I say soon every morning I'll be feeling mighty sick and bad. Thinking about the old time, baby, that I once have had. If I don't go crazy, I say I'm gonna lose my mind. I believe I'm gonna lose my mind. 'Cause I stayed worried, ooh, baby, father, but all the time. Looking here, baby, just right there on my knees. I still sit right down on my knees. Well, I just want to tell you just how you've been doing. What do you want for me to do? I said, what do you want me to do? I've been doing all I can, honey, just trying to get along with you.
That was a song called Low Down Dirty Dog Blues, performed by Son House, a very famous and original blues performer of the early 1900s. It was recorded by Alan Lomax, who lived between 1915 and 2002, and played a very important role in preserving the authentic, traditional songs of America. He actually went around the country in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, recording this very important traditional music. He was afraid that if he didn't capture it, it would eventually disappear and be lost to history. Music, of course, played a very important role in politics as well. It's well known that political statements have continued to inform modern popular music throughout the 20th and into the 21st century, and on into popular music that we listen to today. Music drew attention to community grievances, public protests, and even institutionally sanctioned civic parades. Although political music often took place in the street, while taverns hosted politically infused music makings as well. Concerts and balls facilitated by amateur and professional musicians raised money for a cause or commemorated significant civic events. This tradition has also continued to play an important role, with events such as the Live Aid and Farm Aid concerts of the 1980s to Little Baby's performance during a Juneteenth voter registration rally in June of 2020. Shared musical commemorative culture helped knit a young United States together. Stage performances allowed for the consideration, creation, and affirmation of one's sense of self in relation to the diversity of the American population. An Irish immigrant character might sing as a laughable bumpkin or a liberty-seeking Republican refugee. Staged characters sung a combination of their old and newly forming national, ethnic, and racial identities during these decades when the traditional order had become increasingly unstable. Music played a central role in these performances, which helped shape the nation. An example of a political song is Yankee Doodle. It's a great example of a political song that was commonly shared in early America. Some people have called Yankee Doodle an American national anthem. The song was a celebration of our nation's rustic character, and singing it was a political act. There were countless locally created verses.
I went down the steps along with Captain Goodwin, and there we saw a man and boy just because he put the foot in. Yankee Doodle, keep it on, Yankee Doodle, darling. Find the music and the stepping with the girls behind me. And there was Captain Washington upon a strapping stallion, and giving orders to his men. I guess there was a million. Yankee Doodle, keep it on, Yankee Doodle, darling. Find the music and the stepping with the girls behind me. And there they had a swampy song as big as a log of faces on a good little part along her father's cabin. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle, darling. Find the music and the stepping with the girls behind me. When Johnny Comes Marching Home, and sung by Mr. John Farrell. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. With my hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will do and the boys will dance, the ladies they will all turn out and we'll feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. The old church bell will peal with joy, hurrah, hurrah. So welcome home, my darling boy, hurrah, hurrah. The village lads and lasses, they with roses, they will strew the way. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. The hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Make love and friendship on that day, hurrah, hurrah. With joys and treasures things play, hurrah, hurrah. And let each one perform to God the fill with joy. The warriors hot and reload, the game when Johnny comes marching home.
Those last two pieces were Yankee Doodle, which was a famous political song of the Revolutionary War period, and When Johnny Comes Marching Home, which came later during the Civil War. Again, it was recorded by E. Berliner's Gramophone Company in New York in 1897. The performer was George Gaskin. Other popular early American songs borrowed heavily from British music culture, but they were transformed with deep sarcasm to serve American ends.
The prettiest girl in Showboy Town, slow boy slow. Her name is Fancy Nellie Brown, oh my bullet boy slow. Hear the high and let her go, slow boy slow. Hear the high and let her flow, oh blow my bullet boy slow.
Sailors and boatmen played an essential role in this transition. Music was already crucial to the labors of these men who sang to keep time as they rowed, heaved, and pulled. The centrality of American seamen to securing the legitimacy of the new nation led to the development of maritime-themed patriotic songs in particular.
The prettiest boy in Showboy Town, slow boy is blow. His name is Little Johnny Brown, oh blow my bullet boy slow. He's a high and let us go, slow boy is blow. He's a high and jam low, oh blow my bullet boy slow.
Sea shanties came in three types. The first type is the capstan shanty, which was used for the long work at the capstan, either hauling the anchor in or heaving the ship from one berth to another while the ship was in port. The shantyman, leading the song, usually sat on the capstan head. He sang out the main lines of the song, while the members of the crew, 2 or 3 to each capstan bar, picked up, virtually without any break, the rolling lines of the chorus. The halyard shanties were a second group of shanty songs. They were pulling shanties, used chiefly for hoisting the yards. This again was long work, as distinguished from the third group of short haul shanties. Here's the lyrics to one of these halyard shanties from a song called Blow, Boys, Blow. A Yankee ship came down the river. Blow, boys, blow. A Yankee ship came down the river. Blow, boys, bonny boys, blow. And how do you know she's a Yankee clipper? Blow, boys, blow. Oh, how do you know she's a Yankee clipper? Blow, boys, bunny boys, blow. The stars and bars, they flew behind her. The stars and bars, they flew behind her. And who do you think was the skipper of her? A blue-nosed Nova Scotia hard case. And who do you think was the chief mate of her? A loud-mouthed, disbarred Boston lawyer. And who do you think we had for breakfast? The starboard side of an old sou'wester. Then what do you think we had for dinner? We had monkey's heart and shark's liver. And can you guess what we had for supper? We had strong salt junk and weak tea water. Then blow us out and blow us out homeward. Oh, blow today and blow tomorrow. Blow fair and steady, mild and pleasant. Oh, blow us into Boston Harbor. We'll blow ashore and blow our payday, and then blow aboard and blow away. We'll blow until our blow is over. Blow, boys, blow. From Singapore to blow, boys, Bonnie. Cliffs of Dover, blow, boys, blow. Through the decades and the centuries, successive waves of immigrants from Europe followed each other into America's harbor in New York. Immigrant musicians played an incredibly important role in shaping America's identity. English, German, French, and Italian musicians fundamentally shaped the young country's sacred, military, social, and even concert music. They published songs and organized bands. They performed in orchestras and led education efforts, and they ran music-related businesses. Irish music was warmly received in homes throughout the nation, especially through the sale of sheet music. Published songs denoted as Irish, Scottish, and Italian helped invent the idea of ethnicity in America, even if they were only loosely based on actual regional European styles. Irish ballads and dances remained popular through the early 19th century due to immigrants influenced by the Celtic cultural revival, as well as Irish music's fundamental role in British American culture. Nostalgia-infused traditional Irish music and musicians found commercial success in the young nation. As such, it became a genre of music that bonded an Irish-American ethnic community together, introduced Irish culture to those unfamiliar with it, and entrenched stereotypes about the Irish. Similarly, Americans held Scottish folk songs in high esteem as they imagined a disappearing Scottish primitivism. When the German wave of immigrants came, between 1820 and 1870, they founded singing societies called Mannerchor, which functioned as social and musical organizations. These societies helped keep German culture alive in America and also provided support systems through which immigrant communities could remain active and strong. The same immigrant musicians helped to develop the formal European-style concert traditions here in the United States. Concert halls in the young United States were as democratic and egalitarian as anything else was. And in the earliest years of the century, no musical style or genre was reserved for a particular class of people. Concert halls welcomed all to their performances, although elites remained segregated in box seats from the messiness of the pit. Concert music had existed in East Coast cities for over a century when, in the 1830s, wealthy patrons financed, via subscriptions to the local symphonies and orchestras, the first professional orchestra groups. Lacking the aristocratic tradition of court and church patronage, the early American music, quote, industry had to function as locally financed businesses. New Orleans was the first American city to support an opera company. French operas had been performed in the city from at least 1796. A decade later, in the span of 4 months, New Orleans could witness 21 performances, which included 16 different operas from 9 composers. This town of only 12,000, 1/3 of who were enslaved, who attended performances or on discounted tickets, clearly valued and invested in public music performances. An evening listening to opera often ended with dancing at a ball. Though most of these dances were segregated by race, authorities could only enforce this rule with limited success. From the 1790s through about the 1830s, the number of theater and concert performances grew. Not until the 1840s that the United States really developed the necessary infrastructure to support the performing arts in a broader way. Immigrant musicians made up the majority of these professionals, and they typically performed European-composed pieces from the traditional European canon. But in these same settings, audiences demanded patriotic pieces. Bands formed from discharged military musicians honored those requests. Most towns supported at least one band by the early 19th century, and the members of those bands played in the streets as often as they did in concert halls. This hugely popular African-American composer named Frank Johnson led military bands and dance orchestras in the concert halls of Philadelphia, as well as the cities across Europe. His democratic assumptions about experiences with music changed by mid-century with the growing sense of a moral uplift attached to certain kinds of music. And so as a result, musicians transformed from craftsmen to artists. By the 1840s, the elite had increasingly withdrawn into performances reserved purely for their own enjoyment, such as Italian opera performed in Italian.
Oh, I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee. As I grind to Louisiana, my true love for to see. Oh, it rained so hard the day I left, the weather it was dry. The sun so hot I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry, oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I've come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee.
On the far opposite side, blackface minstrelsy, which both adopted and parodied this now segregated art music, filled the publicly available musical performance void. West African slaves played a variety of instruments, especially drums and string instruments similar to the banjo. The banjo itself was an instrument imported into the United States by African slaves. The Spanish also played a similar instrument to the banjo called the bandora. Both of these cultures introduced polyrhythms and call-and-response style vocals. As the U.S. incorporated more land and spread west towards the Pacific Ocean, more immigrants began to arrive into the country, and they brought with them their own instruments and their own styles. And during this period of time, the U.S. grew to incorporate the Cajun and Creole music of Louisiana, the Polynesian music of Hawaii, and the Tex-Mex and Tejano music of Texas and the Southwest. Immigrants brought with them the Eastern European polkas, Chinese and Japanese music, and Polish fiddling, and Scottish and Irish music. There was Ashkenazi Jewish klezmer, and other styles of Indian, Russian, French, German, Italian, Arab, and Latin music. In the 21st century, American popular music achieved great international acclaim. Even since the ragtime and minstrel songs of the 19th century, African Americans have greatly influenced American popular music. The rural blues of poor black Southerners and the jazz of black urbanites were among the earliest styles of American popular music. At the time, black performers typically did not perform their own material. Instead, they used songs produced by the music publishing companies of Tin Pan Alley. African American blues evolved during the early 20th century, later evolving to create genres like rhythm and blues. During this time, jazz diversified into steadily more experimental fields. By the end of the 1940s, jazz had grown into such varied fields as bebop and swing and other varieties of jazz. Rock and roll was soon to become the most important component of American popular music, beginning with the rockabilly boom of the 1950s. In the following decade, gospel evolved into secular soul. Rock, country, and soul mixed with each other and occasionally other styles, spawning a legion of subgenres over the next few decades, which range from heavy metal to punk and funk. In the 1970s, urban African Americans in New York City began performing spoken lyrics over a beat provided by an MC, and this became known as hip-hop. By the dawn of the 21st century, hip-hop had become a part of the most recorded American popular music. And by the 2010s, hip-hop surpassed rock in overall listenership.